Hello, Fix-It Tony here. This video is a instructional video on bleeding your brake lines and calipers and the master cylinder. What this video does not cover is replacing the master cylinder or actually bleeding the master cylinder. This is just the brake calipers, the brake lines. It's a brake flush, your standard brake flush that you do every 2 years. I'm setting up my table here. What I think you should consider having, there's like 4 different ways you can bleed your brake lines and flush them out. Gravity method, pumping the brake method, a extraction method where you're actually using a vacuum pump at the caliper, and a pressure method with using a pressure tank. This is the one, that's the method I'm using. It's a pressure method. It's going to involve placing the brake fluid inside this tank, pressurizing the system, and driving clean fluid through the system. It's important, as you can see in the background, I have my car lifted up on jack stands safely, securely, and I also went ahead and removed all the tires. If you're doing this at home and without a car lift, removing the tires will do several things. It will allow you easier access to the bleeding valve, bleeding screws, and also keeps the brake fluid off of your tires and rims. Brake fluid is corrosive and it can damage paint. It can stain your tires and your rims. It's best to have those far away. What I also went ahead and did right after I removed my tires, I also put a little bit of creeping oil on the threads, because if it's been 2 years or more since you released those bleeding screws, you want to be kind to your bleeding screws. If you round over or break the bleeding screws, you're in a world of trouble, and it might just be better to buy new calipers. So you really want to be careful. I also went ahead in preparing for this video, figured out which size wrench that I'm going to need for my bleeder valves, and for me it's 8mm. You're going to want to use this end of the box wrench. I have a ratcheting version and I have a non-ratcheting version. I would highly recommend you stay away from this because you'll see clearly once the bleeding process happens, you really don't want a ratcheting version. Also, in the tight space where the bleeding screw is surrounded by caliper iron, you'll have a hard time getting this in. So something as simple as this. If you have an offset, that'd be great. I don't have an offset, so I'm just using one of these. Hopefully all of your bleeder screws have little caps on them. If they don't, go ahead and order a set of bleeder screw caps. You want to protect those tips and keep them clean, corrosion free. So definitely, if you do remove them, if they're dry and cracked, replace them. These were replaced 2 years ago and they're still in good shape, so I'm not going to touch it. I'm not going to replace it. Normally for my car, I would need about 1 liter or maybe just a little bit more than a liter to fill all my lines. But because I'm going to do a thorough flush and I don't want to ever introduce air into my system, I'm going to go ahead and just buy the extra liter and just say I'm going to flush, including filling the lines and filling the reservoir. I'm going to make sure I have 2 liters of brake fluid for this purposes. A plastic bottle to store and capture your brake fluid. As you can see here, I've got these little bottle catches. Each one of these is about, let's see, ounces, milliliters. So this is about 450 mLs. So 2 of these is 1 liter up to this mark right here. So if theoretically, I'm probably going to use more volume. So I never want to take any one of these. I actually have 2 because I'm going to do the rear and the front. I'm going to have these already connected and hung up, ready to go, just so that it speeds up the process. You may only get one of these. If you buy a pressure tank, I would recommend go ahead and get a second one. What you also want to make sure yours has is a flexible hose, but also a 90-degree connector and a little short stubby, because the space is tight. So when you're connecting this to the bleeder valve, as you'll see, you'll want to have this sort of 90, and then just a way to hang this on something while it drains. This is a 2-compartment system. The fluid will first enter here, and then through this overflow come down here, start to fill the bottom tank. When you start to see clean brake fluid in this upper tank, or when this upper tank is all clean brake fluid, then you know that particular line you're doing is clean. You're going to need some form of extraction device, because you're going to need to remove most of the brake fluid from the reservoir, but you'll never want to remove all of it, because you don't want to, again, introduce air. You just want to remove most of it, and I'll talk through that. But you do need one of these extraction tubes. You can make your own. You can use a turkey baster, whatever you want. The next thing you're going to do is prepare your work area around the master cylinder reservoir area. Place some shop towels or rags. You want to try to catch as much of the old stuff from leaking anywhere inside the compartment. Have some sort of a protector on your fender. You don't want to have any drips on the fender, and you're going to have to somehow support the pressure tank. So when you're beginning the process, you're going to remove the cap, and then you're going to remove the screen and place that off to the side. Then you're going to take some sort of an extraction tool. Now you can see that the dirty fluid is darker. The new fluid's going to be pretty translucent, so it might actually be hard to see the new fluid, especially in an old reservoir like this. Keep in mind that there are actually 2 chambers in here, so you might think that's why it's vitally important to not let this reservoir or the pressure bleeder tank go empty and dry, and that's why I'm always going to have extra brake fluid in there for the purposes of my draining, because you don't want this to go dry. So in terms of extraction, you can sort of see the chamber levels. Here's one chamber and here's another chamber. You can't really access it. I'm just going to withdraw fluid down to the minimum line. The other thing to keep in mind is that the brake system, there are basically two channels or 2 systems. There's a separate brake system for the rear and a separate one for the front. So if you run into problems with air in the back, or you're changing something in the back, all you have to do is bleed the rear. The front and rear systems or lines really don't communicate with each other. Let's open up a new can. New cans, they have the seal, so that's important. So this is what clean looks like, and this is what 2 years of use looks like. Clearly, I'd rather have more of this in my brake system than this. Okay, the next step is I'm going to bring back the screen, and I'm going to carefully pour fresh fluid in here. And fill my reservoir. Yes, I'm mixing old with new, but it just helps with the flushing later. You can see that the fluid is going up, 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 up. I'm going to go past the maximum line. Okay. So what you'll see, you can see where my level is. It's just about a half an inch from the top. So that's another source of air in the process of bleeding. So you can't help introduce air into the system when you are bleeding your brake system. Make sure you have the right cap that fits well. The system that I bought, I specified what kind of car I had. So, okay, hand tighten that, and now that is tight and good to go. Let's go prime the pressure tank. The pressure bleeding method will introduce some air. So if your factory assembly use zip ties or other permanent connectors, I would recommend replacing that with a clamp connector, hose clamp. And I'm going to screw this cap onto my reservoir. And then after I'm done priming, I'm going to prime this hose. Oh geez. All right. So this hose is going to be filled with air, and I want to minimize how much total volume of air is going to be introduced into the system. So I'm going to prime this hose with brake fluid, and then I'm going to connect the hose back to the nipple and clamp it down. You want to first, when you fill up the tank, you want to put at least 1 liter of a high quality brake fluid. For Mercedes, only use .4, don't use .5. .4 has better additives than .3, so .4. This particular one, just to give you a sense, you have to pay attention to these ISO classes and SAE codes. So for my Mercedes 94 Mercedes W202 chassis, these are the minimum standards that it calls for. Pentacin is a good brand, made in Germany, or maybe not, I'm not sure where it's made, imported, distributed by, anywho, maybe I'll delete that. But you want to always make sure you use fresh cans, and we want to put at least 1 liter in here, and I'm probably going to put a little bit more than 1 liter because I'm going to use 1 can to fill my reservoir after I remove. So let's go over to that. A few important tips and steps. So you have your when getting your pressure tank ready. If there's a pressure release valve, you want to go ahead and make sure that is locked in a closed position. When you do pump and pressurize the tank, you don't want it to go any more than 10 psi. Make sure that there isn't any debris on the actual hose that goes inside the tank or the cap or anything in here. You don't want any debris, dust, or anything like that to be introduced into the fluid, right? So you always want to work with clean parts. Now we have to fill. Again, my tank is clean, and now we're going to fill it with brake fluid. I'm going to use the part that I already have. I'm going to reserve a little bit just in case I need to top off my reservoir. Open up my second can. And pour the entire contents. Just so you can see what I'm doing, I'm inserting this part, which is the hose, and it goes into the bottom. Tighten this up. All right. Prime this a little bit. Let me see. I got a whole. I actually am tempted to look at the lens, but I have to be looking at my bottle here. Clamp, 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 clamp. There. Quick aside. Let me show you. So my pressure is holding after about a minute at the same 5 psi. So that's reassuring that I don't have any leaks, and all of my seals on my tank and pressure release valve, all that is holding. That's not a source of leaks, and no leaks in my brake system overall. So that's a good reassuring feeling to have. Some key tips when using a pressure bleeding method. I'm going to go through some of them right now. So after I connect the hose, I'm going to pump this up to 10 psi, and I'm going to check the master cylinder reservoir for any leaks. If I detect any leaks, I have to stop what I'm doing and fix that problem. It's vitally important, never let your bleeder tank go empty or the reservoir go empty. Remember, the fluid inside can become clear and it can be very difficult. There's actually 2 chambers. New fluid is almost the same color as a faded reservoir, so it could be hard to see, so be very careful. The bleeding sequence is very important, so I'm going to be starting at the calipers at the farthest away from the master cylinder and then work towards the master cylinder. So that means working on my rear circuit first. So it'll be the right rear passenger, then I'm going to go to the driver's side rear, and then the passenger front and driver's side front. If for some reason when I go to my first caliper and I'm not getting any fluid out, there are some important things that could be causing the problem, especially on cars like this that are more than 20 years old. First, I would have to try slowly pumping the brake pedal. I don't want to pump all the way because I don't want to damage my master cylinder seals. The other thing to keep in mind is that the seals could be sticky or gummed up. So that's where the gentle pumping using your brake could help release some of that. If that doesn't work, then we have to release the pressure from the tank, remove the bleeder fitting to make sure that the bleeder fitting is not plugged, because that can sometimes happen. If that is not the problem and you haven't changed yet your flexible brake hoses, and those flexible brake hoses are more than 15 years old, I wouldn't even bother flushing my brake fluid system, and I would go and first replace all of my flexible brake hoses first. Because what tends to happen with flexible brake hoses is they will degrade and deteriorate, and under pressure they may actually collapse and closing off the flow of brake fluid. So that's another reason why you may not be getting any fluid out of your caliper. Okay, I just spent a few minutes setting up my first shot. A few things that I want to share with you. So you're going to get a rubber hose. You got to make sure the diameter of this hose fits snugly over the bleeder valve. If it's too loose, you're not going to have a good seal, and it's going to potentially either pop off or drip and drain brake fluid everywhere. You have to remember you're going to keep the wrench. You're going to have to put the wrench on first, and then you put this over top. Set your wrench so that it gives you an opportunity to do at least a half a turn in one fell swoop. You might hit this, so I may have to slide this in and jerry rig it, so you might see that on film. These are new brake hoses, so I shouldn't expect a problem. There's a 30 cc capacity in this upper chamber, and again 450 cc's total here. I know I have to use the most fluid on this particular side, so I'm not going to but I have to wait for the fluid to go clear. Okay. Now, halfway through, I'm going to stop and make sure I have to go back and not let the pressure fall below, I think, like 7 psi. So I have to keep it around 10. And hopefully it doesn't drop below 7 during any one particular bleed process. All right, I increased the pressure to 10 psi. see that fluid. The fluid is looking a little clearer. I see clear fluid. I see fresh fluid in the, and I see junk. There's junk in my hose. Interesting. And I'm going to remove this. Whoa. Whoa. Oh. Well, that was unexpected. Oh, I know why. Shit. Okay. So you know what you just saw was a mistake. I was spending too much time preparing for the video shot, and I forgot the most important thing, which was loosen the cap off of the main reservoir. You're supposed to loosen up this cap. See, now I have brake fluid leaking all over. Because this was under pressure, I was supposed to open up this cap a little bit to let air out so the flow can actually happen. I was wondering why I wasn't getting a lot of good flow out of my bleeder valve, and why it was leaking. It was because there was back pressure from the collecting tank. So this is actually a worthwhile lesson that I'm glad I caught on video, because hopefully you guys will avoid the same mistake. I thought I'd come over to the driver's side just to illustrate that, you know, the bleeding screw position could be different in different places, and to illustrate the importance of removing the tire. It just gives you better access and a chance to put your arm in there and leverage the bleeder valve screw. So I just wanted to illustrate that, and then I'll show you the bleed process. Remember that I also was saying that I'm checking the pressure and the volume in my tank every time. So I have probably 500 cc's remaining. And now I just gotta loosen that. And my pressure is still pretty good. You can tell this is dirty. It's still dark. Oh, I gotta loosen this. Oh, it is good. Whew. Remember, this is white plastic, and you can see even how pretty clear that is. If this container was as clear as this hose, you know, you can see how clear the fluid is, right? So theoretically I'm finished, and I can tighten this up. I'm just holding the hose vertically to allow the fluid to drain. And that's pretty clear. Next step is I'm going to turn. Okay, you can see the air bubble. It's right up here at the top. I'm going to move this out of the way. Oh, actually, I want to show that I'm turning this and decreasing the pressure, and I'll be watching this at the same time. This air bubble is getting bigger. I think fluid is being sucked back into the tank. There, I opened it. Completely empty. Okay, let's go zoom out. Let's move this tank out of the way. Now, this is I'm probably gonna drop this tank down lower. Because I want all of the fluid that's in this hose to kind of drain back into the tank. All right, next step. Now, because all of this is tight, if I just start unscrewing this, it's going to start twisting the hose. So I'm actually going to loosen the other end. So the other end that had the straw, I guess, is now loose. So then now as I loosen this, see how it's wanting to untwist, and let it drain. Now what you're going to see is now I have too much fluid in there. Oops. What I should have told you is get your suction device ready. You're going to have to suck some fluid out. Until you can get it, till you can get the level. You can get a better sense of how clear my fluid is now, eh? That's a good sign. And then remember, just tidy up if any oil or fluid got on the threads. Remember, now this is exposed to the environment, so you got precious time. Don't dinker too much. And there. Okay. There, that's sealed. And you should, if I shake this, there's the fluid line right there. And I'm just above the tip of the arrow on my max line. Okay, let me see if I can do this. I'm going to get into my car without knocking my camera over. And I'm going to pump the brakes. It feels firm. About 1.5 inches. Yeah, see? That's firm. About 1.5 inch and a half travel. So that's good. Now let's see. Now, if I didn't tighten my bleeder valves properly, I probably would have lost fluid because I would probably have been leaking. Check for leaks. No leaks. And you can see here, it's important to have the bleeder valve caps. It looks clean and dry. And just put that back on. And that's it. Just do that on all 4 corners and you're going to be in good shape. Thank you so much for watching this video on flushing my brake system. And the next step will be taking this car for a road test and making sure everything works according to plan. And please like and subscribe. Share this video with someone else who you think might benefit from how to perform a brake fluid flush. Please, if I omitted something or if you think you need more clarification on a step, throw something in the comments and I'd be happy to provide further explanation. Thank you. Bye. In a prior video, I tested my brake fluid before deciding to flush it with these test strips. So what I'm going to do is I had poured brand new fluid from this Pentacin, and I'm going to test this new fluid, 1001. And we'll wait 90 seconds to see whether it's fact or fiction, right? Copper in new fluid, does it already exist? Also, moisture. Does moisture already exist in new fluid? And the answer is no. There is 0 water moisture in this brand new fluid. Can you see that? Yeah. All right, so these testing devices actually probably have some merit. I'm excited that I'm excited to test my new brake flush process when I take the car for a road test, but I can't because I haven't put the tires back on yet. But I think
answered that question that we maybe have had, which was, is there water or moisture in brand new brake fluid? I guess the answer is no, at least from this one. If you want to see what the result of the, what am I trying to say? If you want to know what the moisture content result of my old fluid was, you'll have to check another video out. I won't give you the answer in this video. So let's see, 90 seconds later, roughly, approximately, here is the test strip. And you can see here that brand new brake fluid also does not have any copper in it. So this stuff is clean and pure, not pure, but it's clean of the things that we worry about in brake fluid, water and copper. So I know now that my brake system has been flushed and refreshed and should give me at least 2 more years of solid service. Now in 2 years, when I redo my testing video, it'll be interesting to see what the results are of that test, because I now had, in a span of 2 years, 4 years, I would have flushed the system twice. So it'll be interesting to see what the impact that might have on the general degradation of my brake system when it comes to copper levels. Not sure about moisture, but that's about it.